Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we plant up some perennials in this flower bed. So let's go. We are in my front yard, which is the west side of my house. And this flower bed is not full sun, but it's also not full shade. I honestly don't know how many hours of sun it gets, but I can tell you that there are a bunch of Stella D'oro Daylilies in here, and they bloom really well. So I know that this area gets enough sun for the plants that I want to put in this bed today. And what I'm noticing is there's not a lot of color. We are middle of May, and I really want to have some perennials in here that should be blooming around this time. I have a plan for this bed for early springtime. I do have daffodils planted in here. They didn't put on a great show this year because the daffodils were small bulbs, but over the years, this area will look really pretty with daffodils blooming in the early spring months. But what I'm looking for is late spring color. I know I have some summer color in here, which are the daylilies, but I need something before the daylilies bloom. So before I tell you what we're going to plant in here, I'm going to show you basically the front of my house and what's currently blooming, just so you get an idea of where this bed is located. Right over there is my driveway, and you can see off in the distance there is a little bit of color there. There's a rhododendron that's blooming, and over in this area here there are some pansies that are blooming. Over here there are some rhododendrons that are either budded up and are going to bloom or have just barely gone by. And then as we make our way this way, there is a little bit of color in what I call the bay window bed. And you can see there's some yellow, and those are called leopard's bane. They are super pretty, and tucked behind these Stella D'oro Daylilies are more leopard's bane. So we have a little bit of color in this bed. And as we continue panning this way, you'll see a little bit of yellow over here. That's more of the leopard's bane, which is really pretty. And off in the distance, there are a bunch of different coral bells or heuchera that add some nice interest. But as we pan this way to the bed that we're going to work on today, you'll notice that there's really nothing going on. I mean, there's definitely some greenery and things are going to bloom eventually, but I want some color there right now. So what I'll do is I'm going to bring you down there and just kind of show you what's in there and what we're going to do. There's a small creeping phlox here. I planted this here last year. My goal is over time, this will make a nice mat. So we will have some spring color in this area, probably next year. And there are some hosta that are planted around the base of this tree. Here are some daffodils, but they've already gone by. And then this grassy texture, that is all Stella D'oro Daylilies. So you can see there are a lot of Stella D'oro Daylilies in here. Towards the back of the bed, there are some iris, and I'm not sure if they're going to bloom this year or not because they were divided last year. So eventually the plan is for the iris to bloom, and that would add some color for the spring months. And you can see again, there are a lot of daffodils in here. So I'm happy about that we do have daffodils to cover us during the early spring months. But we have a lot of places that are empty. And I specifically left them empty because I didn't know what I wanted to put in here. But finally, when I was thinking about this bed this morning, I came up with a plan. And before I tell you what the plan is, let me just show you a few more things. Last year, I did put in some heuchera towards the front of this bed. I just divided some of the heuchera that I had and popped them towards basically where the lawn ends and where this bed starts. So there are some pockets of heuchera towards the front of the bed. But what I'd like to do is fill in these pockets that are in the center here between the daylilies. I had temporarily planted some bulbs in here, spring bulbs, and there's a patch there. Here's a patch here. We have another patch there, and then another patch over there. They are a mixture of the Muscari, or grape hyacinth. I believe there's some crocuses in here. And then I think some of these are also Glory of the Snow. So we will start by removing some of the leaf litter in here, as well as removing all of these spring bulbs. Not the daffodils, but all these teeny tiny bulbs. I feel like they get hidden in this bed, so I want to remove them from this bed. They'll find a new home somewhere else in my garden. Now, I should point out that last year I did plant some daylilies in here that are not Stella D'oro. And there's a patch over here. And as we move this way, there are some pockets over there. And I'm going to see this summer how they look in here. And if I'm not happy with the placement, we'll move them at that time. But we're going to keep them there for today. And on a different day, this bed still needs to be edged, but we're not going to worry about that today. And the other major thing that needs to happen in this bed is I would like to add drip irrigation. I've been adding drip irrigation to all of my flower beds with the help of Mr. Budget Gardener, but we're not going to worry about that for today as well. But I wanted to point it out that that will be something that will get added to this bed at a later date. So I still haven't told you what we're going to be planting in this bed. I'm going to wait. I figure let's go ahead and do some maintenance work first before we go down to my backyard plant nursery, and we'll go shopping in there for some plants that I spied earlier today and I was very excited about. I was surveying this bed and there are definitely some weeds in here. It's not terrible, but there are weeds in here. And one thing that I'm really going to try to do this year is come up with basically a scope of a project and try to complete it. But you know, sometimes it's hard to do a perfect job each time. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not going to worry today about weeding this bed. That's a whole separate thing. And I think the day that we decide to put down the irrigation, on that day, I'll come in, I'll edge, I'll weed, and then we can lay down the irrigation. Because I want to take full advantage of these couple of perennials that I spied in my plant nursery that are all budded up and are going to bloom pretty soon. I want to enjoy them and I want to see them in this bed. But I also don't want this project scope to be too huge that I don't end up doing it at all. So even though we're going to dig these up today, I do want to point out it's very important to continue to feed the bulbs that are under the ground here because you want them to put on a great show for next year. I could do a few things. I could dig all these bulbs out and I could put them somewhere else in my landscape. Or I could dig all these bulbs up and I could pot them up. And after all the greenery has died back, I can then dry out the bulbs and put them out in the landscape in the fall time. And that's what I'm planning to do, at least for today, is just pot these up and make sure I keep the greenery on. And when it comes to digging, I just want to make sure I'm not digging right straight down. I don't want to break the bulbs. So I'm just digging out just a little bit away from the base of the bulbs. I found that these little teeny tiny bulbs kind of just get hidden. At least for right now, I don't like them here. I might change my mind one day later, but for right now, they truly were just kind of planted in these random areas without much thought. And as is the case with a lot of these tiny bulbs, there might be a chance that I didn't get all the bulbs, and that's fine. Next year, I can always dig up any bulbs that were left behind. And what I'm planning for this video is if I'm doing something repetitive like this, because I have about 5 different areas, I believe 4 or 5 areas that I need to dig up, I will just stop the filming and just finish up that one project. But I'm always going to try to go over my plan and, you know, what's involved when it comes to like taking care of something like these bulbs, because it's important for me to go over that. But I also don't want to just show you me digging all these areas up because there's a lot of other stuff for us to do today. So let me finish this up. And after I've dug up all the bulbs, and I'm not going to mix them, I'm going to make sure I'm putting them separately from each other. I will tell you what's next after that. I feel like I've been digging for gold, and while I was digging for the bulbs, I wanted to just come back on and chat a little bit. So I did say that, you know, it's important to keep the greenery on so that you continue to feed the bulbs. However, you know, then there's reality that when you're trying to move your bulbs, there are times when the top part falls off from the bulb. And guess what? The bulb will most likely still be okay. It's not like the bulb is now no good. So here's one right here, for example. The soil here is not very good. And also, there are a lot of roots. So what happens is, as I've been trying to dig out these bulbs, sometimes it just happens where the top green part breaks off from the bulb. And I know that there will be bulbs that show up in this bed next year, but I'm trying to get as many of them as I can right now. And why did I wear pink? Um, so, I wanted to be real with you because I think that's very important with gardening. When you're digging out your bulbs, there is a chance that the that the greenery will come off from the bottom part of the bulb, and the bulb will be fine. It will really be fine. These Glory of the Snow are super tiny bulbs. They're really, really small. And I got these, like a lot of things in my yard, from my mother-in-law's house. I didn't know where I wanted to put them, so I put them in this bed. And at this point, to be honest with you, I don't know if they're the blue ones or a pink one. I'll have to look back at old videos. But I am trying to get as many of them as I can. I actually think they would look really pretty in pots. So that might be one idea, is I could um, let the bulbs dry out and then store them in my garage, or probably actually my basement where it stays cool during the summer. And then in the late winter, I could pot these up. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. But what I will do at a minimum is, after I'm done trying to find as many of these as I can in here, I will put them in a pot with some dirt. I'll give them some water and, just let them do their thing. And I'll be making a separate video showing you what I plan on doing with all my spring bulbs that are potted up, because I have a whole bunch that are on my porch, like a lot of tulips and daffodils that were on my porch. So I'm going to have to deal with those pots as well. But anyway, I just wanted to come on quickly and basically show you what I'm working on, because this is reality, right? But I'm going to give up pretty soon. I'm going to get as many of these as I can, and then whatever pops up next year, we'll deal with that next year. I'm excited though. I got a lot of bulbs, which that's very cool. I can put these in different areas of my yard now. Okay, I've dug up as many of the bulbs as I could find. So this area got cleared up, this area over here, and then this area over here. Some of these bulbs are actually a good size bulb. So, I mean, we collected a ton of bulbs today, which is very nice. And in here, again, there are a ton of bulbs. I don't want to just necessarily dump these in a different area of my garden. I want to really think about it, which is exactly why I'm going to carefully just try to pot these up and give them some water and just do the best I can with trying to keep the greenery to be above the pot level and put the bulbs down below the bulb level and just let them try to die back as naturally as possible. But, at this point in the season, it is mid-May, and I'm sure the bulbs have gotten some energy for the season stored up for next year. So I'm not too worried about it. Main thing is I don't want them to fully dry out at this point. And here's the last pile of bulbs that were removed. So there are a ton in there as well. And now for the fun part. We're going to go to the plant nursery and we're going to go shop for some plants for this bed. We're on the south side of my house, and this is my backyard. Actually, it's really front yard plant nursery. And I've been really busy, actually. It's been a great season. I've made a lot of friends, and I've been making some great sales with the perennials that are in this bed. Now, primarily, the plants that are in this bed are plants that were divided off of perennials in my yard, and they're also plants that I had winter sown in previous years and just potted up. But also in this bed are some perennials that I either received from somewhere else, be it a store, from a family member, or another backyard plant nursery. Or there are even plants that are from my yard, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do with them when I pulled them out, so they're in here. So it's definitely a nursery where I keep my own plants as well until I'm ready to put them out in my landscape. So right over there are a couple of varieties of plants that we're going to take and we're going to be planting in our new area. So let's go ahead and let's go shopping. Right over here are a bunch of GM, and the variety is called Banana Daiquiri. I bought these GM from a big box store a number of years ago. I think it's probably been about 3 years. And they were marked down. They were at a very good price. It was just one pot. And what I did that year was I took it out of the pot and I divided it up. And then I put them down in this nursery. Then last year, I still didn't know where I wanted to put this GM. So I took them out, I divided them up again, and put them back down here. This is the year we're going to get them planted. So we're going to go ahead and take out all of the GM from this space, and I'll let you know how many pots I have. Well, I filled up this tray. There are currently 14 pots in here, and I noticed that a couple of the pots actually had 2 plants in it. That is super exciting. And they are budded up, so that means they're going to be blooming pretty soon. I'm going to get another tray, and we're going to fill up the tray with the rest of the GM here. Well, that's 5 more plants. So I'm not sure if we're going to need all of these plants for this project, but we might as well take them with us. And then the next thing that we're going to take, there's a tag in here. And again, this is a plant that I bought. I think it's been a few years. I found another GM. I think it's been a number of years, probably 2 or 3 years. And I bought one plant, and then again, I've divided it over time until I found a home for them. It's called Montana Blue Centauria. So there are, let's start pulling them, and I'll let you know how many plants are here. Okay, so it looks like we had 8 of those plants. And again, I noticed in some of the pots there were 2 plants. So let's go ahead and take these plants over to our spot and let's start placing them. I went ahead and placed the GM as well as the Centauria. And most areas have 3 GM in them. I like to do odd numbers when I can. And typically 2 of them had buds on them and 1 of them did not. So I tried to make sure that each section had the same amount, 2 buds, 1 without. And I basically followed that pattern all the way over to down over here. So we will be watching this area this year because I'm not sure if these plants will be happy here or not, but I want to give it a try. And then what I did was I put a Centauria basically in between the daylilies and one behind the daylily, in between the daylilies over here, one behind the daylily. And I just copied that pattern as well, going this way. And that's where the pattern ends around here. And, you know, I did see some other things that are pretty in my yard. Like I have a fringed leaf bleeding heart. I think that would look super pretty in here because it is blooming right now. But I'm really trying to stick with the initial scope of this project. And so far we're doing really good. We removed those spring bulbs that I wanted to remove. And then we found the 2 types of plants that I saw in my nursery that I really wanted to try in this bed. So what we're going to do right now is I'm just going to show you my process for cleaning up and planting one of the Banana Daiquiri Geums as well as one of the Centauria Montanas, which by the way are also known as mountain bluets. At the base of the Geum, there's basically just the old leaves from last year, and you can just pull those off if you want, or you can use some sort of hand pruners, and you just want to clean up the base a little bit. And when it comes to the planting depth, I'm just going to be planting it the same depth that they are in these pots because you can see they look very happy. I'm just going to make sure that the green growth is above the soil level and the roots are below the soil level. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to space these a little closer because in certain areas, the daylilies I feel are going to get bigger and they're going to kind of crowd these out. So I would rather these be a little bit closer together, and I think they'll make more of an impact that way anyway. In the springtime, I like to fertilize a lot of my perennials, but at this point, I'm not going to worry about fertilizing. If I was to fertilize, I personally like to use 10-10-10. It's just an all-purpose fertilizer, but you can always use whichever fertilizer that you choose to use. And the roots actually don't look too bad. If it was very pot bound, I would go ahead and really try to loosen the roots up, but I'm not going to bother doing that because they don't look bad at all. This time of year, when I don't have a ton of color in my gardens, I like to look around and see what's blooming. That's good to know that the two perennials that we're planting today both bloom in the late spring. And it's perfect because it's after the daffodils have bloomed. But I'm still looking at other things in my yard that are blooming right now in case I want to add them to this area. We might as well just plant these three in this section here. This year I'm really trying hard to just focus on small projects and trying to complete them. I noticed that if I make the project too big, it can be a little discouraging for me, and I'd rather feel a sense of accomplishment. So just doing the few things that we set out to do today would make me very happy. And I think that's a good way to attack projects like this versus edge the whole bed, weed the whole bed, fertilize everything, try to plant it to the perfect way that you want to get it planted. The roots on this need to be disturbed a little bit. So I'm going to be feeling very good once we're done just planting these plants today. I normally love to divide my perennials. And even if some of these have two plants in them, if you can believe it, I'm not dividing them. They're still very small. They just were divided last year. And I have plenty of plants. That's the way to do it though. Try to buy plants on clearance if you can. And if you don't have a home for them, just put them in a holding spot and think a little bit about what you want to do with them. When the time's right, then you have them and you can plant them. And in the meanwhile, go ahead and divide them. That's why I always have extra pots always on hand. Okay, that looks good. And by the way, as I'm working in this bed, I am finding a few more bulbs, of those spring bulbs that we had mostly pulled out. They are so tiny. I know that we'll find some pop up in this area next year, and that's fine. I know we got most of them. This Centauria is awfully pretty. It's I feel like it's a flower that if someone looked at it and saw it, they'd be like, "What is that?" Because it's a little different. And you can see that the roots are coming out from the bottom here. This plant definitely wants to be put in the ground. And I'm noticing there's actually 1, 2, 3 plants in here, but I'm going to resist and I'm not going to divide it. Not this year anyway. Right in this area here are some daffodils. And I think I planted them there last year. I think I was going for basically trying to make a swoop that kind of went around like that. But I don't want that anymore because that's exactly the area where I want to plant 3 geum. So I figured I'd show you my process for digging them up. I've already dug up a few that were already in my way, but it's all good. I want to show you my process for just working on a very simple project like this. And, some of the issues that you might encounter when you're working on a bed. So you might have planted something in a spot that you no longer want there anymore. So you just have to tackle it. These daffodils did not bloom this year, and that's because they're pretty young sized daffodil bulbs. So they might bloom next year, I'm not sure. But the big thing is you want to leave the green on here because you still want to be feeding the bulb. So we're just going to go ahead and we don't want to dig right at the base. We want to dig out a little bit. And if I had to guess, the bulbs are at least probably 4 inches or so deep. And that's what it looks like when you dig it up. The big thing you'll notice is the bulb is here, and notice the white right here. That means you want to plant this bulb at least that deep, probably somewhere around here. I was originally going to be lazy and just plant the 3 GM plants in between these daffodils, but come on, if we're going to go through the process, let's do it right. And there we go. We dug those out. I'm just going to keep on planting more GM over here and then finish up our little swoop over here. And when it comes to these daffodil bulbs, I know I have some daffodils in here, so I'm just going to plant the rest of these back over in this area. Okay, good timing. I just finished up and it's just starting to rain. So I wanted to quickly show you the progress that was made. And again, I am very happy that we got a bunch of these plants in because otherwise they'd just be spending another year in my plant nursery. So you can see there's GM here, and I did groupings of 3, and I basically put them on either side of the Stella D'oro Daylilies that are in the center. There's a grouping of 3, a grouping of 3 over there, one over here, and one over there. And then finally, one over there. So I think those came out really nice. And then also, I put the Centauria between the groupings, kind of like right there. And you can see they kind of go this way. They're like the lime green color. And they're just dotted all the way basically to the end. So, again, time will tell. This area does not get full sun, but it also doesn't get full shade. So I think that this is a great place to put these plants. And I will definitely give you an update and show you what they look like once they're blooming. But you can see that I did water them in, so they should be happy for now. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I love bringing you along with projects like this. There are many projects, but they actually still take me a while. And I love showing you basically my thought process and executing my ideas. I love being able to shop my own yard for plants. I think that's a great thing. And the biggest thing I want to be able to teach you in this video and other videos is it's okay to not have a flower bed perfect. It's a process, right? And we are making progress in this process. I feel very happy with what we got done today, and I can't wait to give you updates on the plants that we put in today, as well as any other additional plants that I put in this bed. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.